What is the scariest conspiracy theory if true? That Planet X is real, orbits like a comet and so enters the solar system at infrequent intervals, and is home to intelligent life that's affected past human civilizations. Don't know about aliens, but they just announced a new planet a few days ago. Your description of Planet X is straight out of Godzilla vs. Ghidorah. That AskReddit questions about conspiracy theories are periodically posted by the government to measure how close the general public is to uncovering the truth. Why would they post them? They just need to wait for a post, then monitor the thread as it develops. The entire universe was created, all at once, last Thursday. Your memories from before then, also created last Thursday. That aliens are already here on planet Earth, and they aren't extraterrestrial beings but extra-dimensional beings. Edit. This conspiracy is not mine. It actually comes from a guy who called in at a radio show some years ago claiming to be a former employee at Area 51. The guy sounds very distressed and sounds like he is speaking some truth. A fellow Reddit user by the name, In Pursuit of Knowledge, Reddit webpage, pointed this out in the comments with a link to a video of the radio show YouTube webpage, which is where this conspiracy comes from. I should also point out that a guy called the radio show weeks later claiming to be the Area 51 caller saying it was all a hoax, but apparently his voice didn't sound like the original caller at all. Theoretically possible. Mathematically we know higher dimensions exist. It is possible that creatures exist in them. Some people believe that ghosts, angels, demons etc. are just higher dimensional beings which we have managed to glimpse from time to time when they interact with our world, if they exist at all. That seems the most plausible explanation to me, although I don't really buy it. A dimension isn't analogous to a place. A space being n-dimensional is an attribute, very roughly the number of coordinates you need to specify a particular point in a neat way. Technically this sense applies locally for a manifold or vector space, and neat is hiding some more technicalities. It's not like here's one dimension, here's another, and mathematically you can have infinitely many dimensions of a space. Whether our physical space, time, has more than 4 is another matter, and in major potential models of the universe such as string theory and M-theory it does, but even then it wouldn't be like we can point at for example dimension 5 and 6 and wonder if the Borg or whoever live there. That doesn't make sense just in terms of the definition. Nothing lives in the first or the second dimension, either, nor do those terms make full sense. Terror organizations are funded and supported, as an alternate form of war, by shadow governments. Elsa good freaks me TF out. Theory that those weird videos on YouTube with Spider-Man and Elsa are actually conditioning children to trust predators. I know that sounds really stupid, but holy shit, you have to read about it. It's crazy and I honestly think it's true. R. Elsa Gate. Edit. Found this really disturbing TED Talk related to this stuff. James Bridle. The nightmare videos of children's YouTube. And what's wrong with the internet today TED Talk webpage. T528,118. Not to mention. YouTube webpage. Mickey Mouse son dead in gas explosion. YouTube webpage. And X200B. Mickey Mouse baby get caught in elevator crying. And X200B. Fucking hell. Did anybody get to the bottom of who was doing that? That stuff was weird and evil. The animation was so bad it looked like it was procedurally generated. Oh, new conspiracy theory. I think it's new. That AI has really gone super intelligent in some lab and jumped the firewall. It's now out there on the web trying to prep our kids to serve it. Never mind. The animation would be better than ours if it was smarter than us. Realistically, it's probably a combo of people who get a kick out of shocking children, parents and pedophiles scouting young children. A lot of people think it's mostly the latter. These videos are easily identifiable, attract children, and the shock gross factor makes children more likely to comment. So it may be as simple as pedophiles post these videos as a way of easily grouping contactable children together. You can just open YouTube and find any number of these videos with a whole new set of kids to pick from any time you want. There's a similar problem with Music Lie webpage. Anywhere kids congregate, pedos are certainly lurking. Some people think it's more organized than that. There's always a bunch of weird comments on these videos and some people have taken a crack at translating them. Reddit webpage and X200B. It's quiet in space because something incredibly evil and horrific is snuffing out advanced life once it starts colonizing other worlds. You'd like the Dark Forest trilogy, based around the concept that your species is safer in the dark of space. Declaring your position is essentially an invitation for more advanced species to find and do what they will with you. The trilogy is usually referred as the Three-Body Problem Trilogy, or Remembrance of Earth's Past Trilogy. The Dark Forest is the middle book. Or is something incredibly wise that knows that colonizing other worlds isn't the move. Yet I don't get why it's always so gloomy. In the book Childhood's End there is a race of super advanced aliens who went down the path of technology and expansion and realized it was a dead end. That there is a sort of hard limit to civilization and it's insurmountable and irreversible. You can't convince super intelligent uber humans to procreate or be more happy or a whole bunch of other shit, and they will never accept going back to being dumb again. This race of aliens is chosen by an entity comprised of pure energy and supreme power, to prepare sentient beings throughout the universe for merging with this massive intelligence. Not in a sinister way really, but not entirely mutual. Humans don't like the thought of being subsumed. Very interesting. This one race of aliens who made the wrong choice is used as a friendly chaperone to all other races that will eventually become part of this eternal and supreme intelligence. Though it's sort of impossible to know whether that's good or bad. I know I typed out a lot here, but the book is worth a read anyway. We are all just code in a simulation being run by a far more intelligent species who is trying to determine why humans died out long ago. They run the simulation to cut millions of years to pinpoint the moments where we went wrong and to learn why civilization crumbled to prevent the same fate from taking them. When we die, our code is either terminated entirely or is repurposed into another life in a form of digital reincarnation. That social media information gathering gathers so much data on your personality that it allows effective social engineering, changing how you think, how you shop, how you vote, which has a chain effect of you teaching the same things to your kids, family, friends etc. Yes, that's exactly how it works. AI tries to predict what you want to see, so it prioritizes things similar to what you engage with, what you react to, how it thinks you will react, and the more you engage, the more you tell about yourself. People are pretty predictable. There was a problem with Facebook AI being so good at predicting who was gay that it outed a lot of people before they came out to their families through ad suggestions, etc. But it tries to figure out who you are a little, then guide you toward a bubble and cluster you with others. That in turn engineers you to be someone who can be defined easily for advertising. People feed into this bubbling. They know they'll get the most clicks if rather than type. Trump makes decent point on economy. The headline is, Trump owns Democrats. Just wait for the News feeds and news sources do the same. They aggregate what you like and try to give you news that fits what you'd like to hear, keeping you engaged, predicting your bubble, defining it, and keeping you in it so you pay attention enough to engage with their advertisers. With all this information, politicians can use social media to influence you, flood you with confusing and false information that distracts you from actual facts, and target you with efficiency. The army can predict people's voting tendencies based on what news they consume, so they can gerrymander based on highly accurate data, so you can't escape easily to moderation. It wants you in extremes. My favorite is to watch a reasonable conservative argument video on YouTube, then watch the recommendations or autoplay go to the next video, which slowly seeks to indoctrinate me into their viewpoint to the point where I end up watching just some of the most vile hate videos out there. It's all real and being used against us. I think the trick is to know that it's happening, and that you can make a choice to be independent from it, and you can make a difference without being controlled by it. You can be involved with your communities and local government and not have your conversations dictated by what they tell you, but how you interact with the people around you. You can spend less time in front of the Black Mirror and more time just listening to others or reading important works. Stay informed. Read the news for a little bit every day. Try to understand stories from multiple sides, not just two. Use social media to follow artists you like or family and not to get your news. Don't leave 24-hour news on all day unless you work in the news world. I thought this was about theories, not facts. They totally and demonstrably do this, all the time. Once, a targeted ad for a pregnancy test let a woman know she was pregnant before she did. That Avixie was killed because of his For a Better Day music video exposing elite sex slavery. Mattress Firm is something more sinister and powerful than we could possibly imagine. They're trying to change the shape of the human spine over the next 200 years, so that once the time comes, our bodies will react perfectly to their mutation-causing engineered pathogen, and the human body will be the perfect host for their species. I wish to believe Mattress Firm is part of a society that feeds off mattresses. There are 3 mattress firms and 3 McDonald's in my town. Wake up, sheeple. Based on the idea of the Fermi paradox and the Great Filter, it's that there is a lot of alien life out there but we don't hear or see any of it because the ones that still exist know to keep quiet as there is some greater alien force or technology that hunts and destroys civilizations. There is a great short sci-fi story out there where we finally get a clear message from the heavens, and it simply says, "Quiet, they'll hear you." Reminds me of jungle civilizations whose territories have been declared illegal to trespass, including the airspace except for government flybys used to monitor their status. And it made me think that maybe aliens that supposedly contacted humans when they built Stonehenge, the pyramids, etc. realized it was shitty for us for them to be here, so they declared our atmosphere a no-fly zone minus surveillance, which we've come to know of as UFO sightings. That Jews run the world, because if that's true then I'm the only Jew they left out of the cabal. Right? I mean, my dad's a rabbi, who ordains other rabbis. If we aren't included in the free Jew Golden World Power Program, what the hell does my family need to do to qualify? Well, technically the conspiracy isn't that all Jews control the world. It's that there is a highly influential sect of Jews with influence in government, media and capitalism that operate in order to achieve their own goals. That every UFO that has been reported is actually a part of one of the government's black budget secret programs. which get over $60 billion in funding each year, and that the government has created such a stigma around UFOs and aliens that it would be entirely feasible for them to create the ultimate false flag event. Think 9/11x1 million. To make the populace believe there is an actual alien invasion happening so they can either A. create a situation that would help pull the world together, or B. give them an excuse to pour hundreds of billions of dollars more into the military program without the people questioning it. And X200B. Edit. It's a false flag, not a red flag. Think 9/11x1 million. My god, that would be 911 million. YouTube webpage. That the government has a deal with aliens that they are allowed to abduct and probe us in exchange for technology. According to Charles Hall, there is a deal with aliens and the government for the tall greys to be allowed to use the land around Nellis Air Base as a sort of stopgap service station on their way through the solar system in exchange for technology. We also service their craft using, get this, branded Lockheed parts. Considering how pervasive Lockheed is in government contracting, I think it actually makes the theory slightly more plausible. That the rich elite have grown bored of mundane highs and delights and murder, rape, sacrifice and hunt humans for entertainment. They do it because they're so rich. They can buy anything they want and it doesn't satisfy them. They're attracted to morbid, disgusting and crude art, music and hobbies. Panama Papers. Around 11 million leaked documents showing a lot of money laundering, tax evasion, money being secretly handed off to terrorist organizations, offshore accounts being used to hide crimes, including theft and at least one instance of rape of underage orphans. Lot of fun researching that one. Mostly all from the world's top 1% or government officials. That JFK was killed by our government because he didn't want to just be their puppet. My favorite JFK conspiracy theory is that Oswald was the lone assassin but missed, and in the confusion he was accidentally shot by one of his own Secret Service agents. The government covered it up not for nefarious reasons, but to protect the agent from public retribution. It's one of my favorite conspiracy theories, but the idea that the Dallas police, the Secret Service, and members of the Kennedy admin all got together to keep it a secret is a bit far-fetched. This has gotten a bunch of responses, so I feel like I should expand on it a little. The Secret Service agent with the AR-15 was in the car directly behind Kennedy. If the gun had gone off, it would have been mere feet from a couple of Secret Service agents. Various Kennedy administration randos as well as at least one Dallas motorcycle cop who was right next to the car. A bunch of random people with no real incentive to keep this thing a secret would have known about it. This is the real but Rackarad conspiracy theories. Let's say there was a fake moon landing. You mean that everyone involved, lights staff, production staff, all the people involved from the guard who guards the studio set are all 100% into the con, and no one there is working on that specific project just because he needs money? Nah, that's the part I don't believe. Big ass conspiracy theories. Edit. I don't believe the moon landing is fake. But it doesn't matter, cause it doesn't matter what do we believe. Facts are facts. Also, if you're going to come with if large groups of people can't keep a secret, how do we know about the NSA spying on us? Let me remind you that is because large groups of people can't keep secrets. My favorite take on that, they had Stanley Kubrick fake the moon landing. Being Stanley Kubrick, he of course had them film on location. Gonna get this out of the way early in this thread. I spent a long time researching this. I'm probably older than most Redditors and my thinking was this. I have lived through many different presidents, congresses, and senates, and yet we seem to keep marching in the same direction no matter who is in power. So why is this? So I started thinking back through each president. I thought Jimmy Carter was a little strange, but as I thought back, I realized that Kennedy was the strangest of all. So I decided to look into it. What I realized is that I had no idea what was actually going on, and there are facts that we simply cannot ignore about the situation. I believe that most people could understand what actually happened and how it has shaped our world today with about 10 hours of reading. The hard part is communicating what happened in a credible manner since there are so many details. But here is my best shot at it. Forgive me if I get a few details wrong, but this should be pretty accurate. Essentially, JFK and his administration began pursuing peace through diplomacy rather than through overt force and using covert operations to stage coups. To really understand this, you have to go back to the Dulles brothers, John Foster and Allen. They were partners at the big law firm, Sullivan and Cromwell. Through their positions in this law firm, they came into contact with very powerful people and represented very powerful companies. Sometimes, they found that their use of international law was not enough to meet the demands of their customers and friends. Around 1951, Iran nationalized the oil industry there. Anglo-Persian Oil Company, Wikipedia web page. And many large firms lost access to that natural resource, which made them loads of money. So, in order to regain control of those resources, an operation coming from within the CIA. Dulles was not yet director, but had been involved in the CIA for a long time, recruiting German officers and others during WW2, was launched and named Operation Ajax. Kermit Roosevelt was sent into the country and provided money and other resources to people there who wished to overthrow Mossadegh, current leader. Once the situation became unstable enough, the US helped to install the Shah of Iran as their vassal dictator. This scenario has been carried out numerous times, well over 30, but the list in Wikipedia that used to exist has been scrubbed, and should seem familiar to you as it is basically what happened in Ukraine by funneling resources through NGOs. This was the beginning of the CIA-covered regime change operations to seize control of strategic countries to exploit for reasons of power and resources. So let's fast forward to Cuba and the Bay of Pigs. Dulles was in charge of the CIA by this point, and they, along with the Joint Chiefs, were determined to take control of Cuba and not back down from Russia because there was this perception that there was a great communist threat. Whether they actually believed that communism was an existential threat to everyone or used it as a convenient excuse to do what they wanted to, similar to the war on terrorism now, is up for debate. So, in 1961, a group of rebels, trained and supplied by the US High ISIS, were to go into Cuba and overthrow Castro, bringing control of the island state to the US. Apparently there were notes in Dulles' archives saying essentially that once they were on the beach, this would force Kennedy to use the might of the military, especially planes, to support the rebels in Cuba. Kennedy, in fact, did not do this when he found out what was going on. The CIA did not inform him this was going to happen, and left Dulles' operation to fail and bring about his humiliation. Another little known fact is that we also sponsored a coup in France just a few days later, which also failed, but the evidence linking it to the CIA was not as strong. Algiers Putsch of 1961, Wikipedia web page, and JFK assassination plot mirrored in 1961 France, Part 1. Who What Why web page. Kennedy, who spoke with de Gaulle during this, was to have offered his military support to help him but could not account for his own CIA or something very similar. Then we had the Cuban Missile Crisis in 1962. which was resolved by John and Bob Kennedy using diplomatic channels and agreeing to disarm missiles in Europe if Khrushchev withdrew his missiles from Cuba. This opened up a dialogue between the Kennedy administration and Russia where they began working toward peaceful solutions to their differences. You can hear this in his peace speech at American University shortly before his death YouTube webpage. Many people who follow the conspiracy believe it was his secret society speech that got him killed. In fact, it was his pursuit of peace through diplomacy in the face of a policy of imperialism and direct conflict. We have all heard the quote from JFK about shattering the CIA. He actually had begun this process by aiming at a 20% reduction by 1966. JFK and the Unspeakable, Why He Died and Why It Matters. James W. Douglas. Google Books webpage. V equals on a pigeon, Q equals JFK %20 sire %20 staff %20 reduction, and F equals false. So he had already managed to destroy the career of one of the most powerful people in the world. Dawes was getting rid of the jobs of many CIA staff who had no qualms with violence and covert operations, and was in the process of escalating conflicts throughout the world, thus threatening the careers and livelihoods of many people within the military-industrial complex. Ray McGovern, former CIA analyst, had this to say: "Intelligent people know that the empire is on the downhill. A veteran CIA agent spills the goods on the deep state and our foreign policy nightmares." Salon.com webpage. Well, John Kennedy had problems of the same kind, and he fired Dawes, and that was a no-no. You don't fire people like Dawes. Kennedy embarked on a new course. He talked with Khrushchev. He had people, interlocutors, who talked with Castro, and, worst of all, he issued 2 executive orders, saying that 1,000 US troops would be pulled out of Vietnam by the end of 1963 and the bulk of the rest by 1965. He was going to give up Southeast Asia to the commies, and God knows what would happen next with the dominoes falling in Indonesia, and my God. So he was killed by the deep state. You may have watched the movie JFK by Oliver Stone. In that movie, the character played by Donald Sutherland, Mr. X, was actually based on a man named Fletcher Pruitt who ran covert operations in the CIA for years. He has said that James Douglas' book JFK and the Unspeakable basically got it right. So that's the story. Sorry it is long, but there is so much to understand, and if you read the books I listed above, then you will have a much better picture of our past and present. So the collapse of civilization is often labeled as a conspiracy theory. Case in point, our collapse is a conspiracy sub. I think the basis for this is that the sub feels all public estimates of the rate of climate change and general environmental collapse and the eventual consequences have been downplayed by world governments to avoid panic. Scientists, due to reticence and the high standards of scientific evidence, and business interests, because negativity is bad for business. If true, I don't think anything could be scarier than the hard road ahead of us toward human extinction. All the scientists in the entire world can keep a secret. Now that's news. That there is a small town in mid-Michigan that somehow consumes more power than Grand Rapids, Michigan. What? GR has a population of nearly 200,000. That would be a lot of power. It is a lot of power, citizen. Now move along. There aren't that many people there and you are right. Nothing to see. This is actually scary. What kind of shadow budget experiment would be taking up that much power? If it's what I'm thinking, it's not super scary really. There's a line of servers in locations throughout the US. It's easier to do in less populated areas, so that's what's there. Or a Stargate. Edit. This is a thing. Right, I thought it was a thing. It'd be great if you actually linked to something. Some other joker in this thread can't produce an answer, either. Care to elaborate? Lived my entire life in Southwest Michigan and recently moved to GR. Don't know what this is about. Lived in Mid and Western Michigan my whole life. Never heard of such city. The town is Hemlock, Michigan. Home of Hemlock Semiconductor. Hemlock MI has a population of 1,585, and the Hemlock Semiconductor plant is the largest consumer of electricity in the state of Michigan. It is a joint venture of the Dow Chemical Company, Corning Inc. and Shin-Etsu Chemical of Japan. Dow Chemical is headquartered in nearby Midland, MI. The company makes polycrystalline silicon, known more commonly as polysilicon, by melting quartz rod to get metallurgical grade silicon as the start of one of the most complex chemical processes in the world. The end product sold to the semiconductor industry is 99.999999999% pure. Hemlock is the only US supplier to the semiconductor industry. It is the largest consumer of electricity in Michigan and annually consumes more electricity than all the residents and businesses of Lansing and Ann Arbor combined. Don't know about the Grand Rapids referral. The only US polysilicon supplier is still reeling webpage. That a selective group of few men and women control the entire world politics while hiding in shadows through puppet politicians. What I'm about to tell you is top secret. There's a powerful group of people out there that are secretly running the world. I'm talking about the guys. No one knows about the guys who are invisible. The top 1% of the top 1%. The guys that play God without permission. I know it's meant figuratively, but the top 1% of the top 1% would still be 750,000 people. Everyone secretly dislikes you and is just pretending to be your friend. Or that you're mentally disabled and everyone is just being kind and supportive so you can have a full life, but you're unaware. Wow, the conspiracy is getting deep. Now they're posting my fear out in the open in an obscure thread which they know I will read so that I normalize it and make me doubt its validity. That there are no great conspiracies or cabals. That there is no grand scheme or plan. That no one, not even an evil someone, is at the wheel. And that leaders and government are essentially the geopolitical equivalent of every adult simply being a kid who feels like they are pretending to be an adult. I feel like this would scare more people if we were honest. People who believe ridiculous things are comforted by the idea they understand. That they have some explanation for the world. If there was no secret, no layers of mystery, they'd feel lost. That's ultimately why I believe religion, cults, conspiracy theories, etc. all exist, because the reality is actually too much to bear. The world is chaos. The universe is chaos. And our attempts to make sense of it is what causes our issues. We are self-aware primates with the ability for abstract thought, which has helped us succeed beyond our wildest dreams. But it's also led to unfathomable problems. We fight about skin color, genitals, issues of reproduction, how we obtain energy, etc. Our brains can fail. Our immune systems can attack us. If we aren't held as infants, we will die. If we drink too much water, we will die, etc. There is so much chaos and randomness, and our brains have us expect order in a world that offers none. Every religion has schisms. Our brains will create false realities to fill in gaps. We can only perceive minuscule amount of the information being fed to us by our environment. The Ninth Circle Cult UK, the Finders Cult, Global, the Hampstead child abuse scandal, that Theresa May destroyed the Westminster child abuse dossier to protect herself and friends. evidence. European royals hosting human hunting parties. That the US Customs Agency trafficked children in the 70s 80s including Amy Billig. That Johnny Gosch, first kid on a milk carton, was one of the rent boys George Bush was investigated for hiring at the White House decades later and was brainwashed. Jersey Island is where the rich European politicians go to sleep with killed trafficked children. I was thinking the same about the human trafficking that is rumored about in American politics. I think human trafficking is proof enough that there are people in this world rich enough that they can get away with anything and so they do. Not that there isn't awful regular people trafficking others, but I think it had to have had a lot of powerful people backing it initially to have it be so organized and big now. I am at work right now so I can't get to all my saved docs links, but here are a couple to look into if you're interested. Watch the documentary Conspiracy of Silence, it's very good. And not directly related but still a major cover-up that will fuck you up. The testimony videos are disturbing, be warned. Hampstead Satanic Cult, The Truth About the Cover-Up webpage. Redirect notice webpage. In webpage. Redirect notice webpage. The reality proposed in this comic from the parking lot is for Offbix webpage. I've thought about this before. I mean, think about it. I don't really have evidence that anyone besides myself is actually a conscious, thinking human being. Weird to think about. The agreement between hot dog manufacturers and bread bakers to always sell their products in different quantities. For example, hot dogs in 10 packs and buns in 8 packs. Don't go to the light, it's a trap. The light at the end of the tunnel that people report seeing when they have near-death experiences is to be avoided because that's how they get ya. They are some unscrupulous aliens who installed a soul-collecting machine on the moon or something. The scary thing for me is the idea that you can be tricked into enslaving yourself in the afterlife as soon as you die. I swear I read a short science fiction story with basically the same idea when I was a kid. The concept was that these ethereal beings floating around in the upper atmosphere were the source of the human concept of angel's heaven. But they were essentially just eating people's souls as they popped up. Can't for the life of me remember what it was called, though. It's called The Harvest by Tom Godwin. Google Books has a copy. Search for the word Frailings and X200B. Man, imagine if there is an evil entity that disguises as your deceased loved ones in an attempt to lure you into its trap. This is kind of in the Tibetan Book of the Dead, that we are continually recycled for energy and after death we have to accept it to not be recycled anymore. That time is a giant loop and we actually build the pyramids in the future. They are here. They have been here for a long time. They aren't all nice. In their defense, not all humans are nice either. Some are huge holes. I actually don't believe this one and I think it's pretty loopy, but here it is. Some people believe that Earth is an enslaved planet that serves as a feeding ground for a superior alien race, except not feeding in the sense of meat, but that they apparently feed off our negative emotions, fear and anger specifically. Well, in that case I am a good slave that contributes a lot to their cause and I deserve a raise. I think you have a fundamental misunderstanding of the concept of slavery. The reason that we have not made contact with aliens is not because they aren't out there but because they are purposefully being quiet because they are aware of some other large threat. I know your tricks. This is just the government trying to see if we know about their secrets. I think flat earth, if that is true then almost everything I know is a lie. That you're stuck in a coma and all attempts to reach you to get you out of it are real. The past never existed. The future will never exist. Only the present is real. My son, on this the day of your birth I must reveal to you this eternal wisdom to guide you during your remaining days. Forget the future. You cannot predict it. Forget the past. You cannot change it. Forget the present. I didn't get you one. What if somewhere in this thread there is a whistleblower who is saying a conspiracy she knows to be true but would be in danger if it was exposed publicly, so they post it here hoping someone looks into it, like a call for help. Aside, whole life is a simulation. We are alone and stuff. I think the scariest one is that government has mind control capabilities. Seeing just how easily some people are influenced by simple things in media just freaks me the fuck out. Some people are influenced by simple things in media. Some people are dumb and gullible. That's not a secret. But when you see intelligent people acting dumb, insane, mindless, or violent, then you have to worry. But when you see intelligent people acting dumb, insane, mindless, or violent, then you have to worry. Turns on TV. Well fuck. That Atlantis is real. Humans are a species with amnesia, and we had civilizations arise before us that fell hard enough to send us back to the Stone Age. Pretty terrifying. Remnants of modern civilization would only last about 10,000 years, and that's only for our largest structures, like the Hoover Dam. We can't learn from our old mistakes if there isn't a history to study. There are several issues with this. Remnants of modern civilization would only last about 10,000 years. False. When something is underground it can last for a long ass time. If we, say, found a temple with a graveyard around it and we carbon dated the bones to be 10,000 years old, that alone would suggest some sort of civilizations. You don't get stone squares surrounded by bodies buried 2 meters under the surface naturally. Big structures would be gone. But there would be evidence if some civilization existed 10,000 years ago. Also, if that civilization was at or above our own technological level, there would likely be evidence through the remnants of mines, shit in space, evidence of extracted resources, etc. Also, if that civilization was at or above our own technological level, there would likely be evidence through the remnants of mines, shit in space, evidence of extracted resources, etc. Exactly. The reason we know we are the first technologically advanced civilization in our planet is that all the iron, the oil and the coal were where they were supposed to be. If we were to disappear, we would completely fuck the next civilization because there would be no easily accessible fossil fuels indoors to kickstart their industrial revolution. Edit. Typo. Edit 2. Youthface E-Girl pointed out that future civilizations would have access to the easiest metal deposits ever, namely, the ruins and wrecks of our cities and infrastructure with literally millions billions of tons of iron, aluminium, etc. Which is a fair point. Guess I should have said no easy natural deposits. My point fuller stands for fossil fuels, though. That elite pedophilia is very real and much deeper than we think. That branches of the CIA only job is to get politicans to fuck kids so they can be easily controlled. If you doubt this, go read about Ted Gunderson, an FBI agent who was investigating a pedophile ring that led to the White House and Washington D.C. Edit. Spelling added Ted Gunderson. So listen up. The bacteria that live on us obviously have no idea that they're live on us. They are so small they can't even comprehend our size. The fact that this may be us on a much larger being is terrifying. Not that we are living in a simulation, but that you are living in a simulation. You are the only thing that is real, everyone else is the simulation. Users commenting in this thread, all other users on Reddit, Users on YouTube, Instagram, the internet itself, all your classmates, co-workers, teachers, even your friends and family, all highly advanced NPCs. They act like people, and are 100% perfect at seeming real. The scariest part is, try to prove this false. The Franklin cover-up. A man named Lawrence E. King was running the Franklin Credit Union in Omaha in the 1980s until it was discovered he embezzled tens of millions of dollars. It was also alleged that he was running a sophisticated child pedophile ring and catered to the most powerful men in the United States. Evidence of this includes chartered flights that always listed 3-5 named passengers in their itineraries. King also had a private bedroom installed in his office for guests. Several children came forward with allegations that they had been present at satanic-style rituals involving King and politicians like Barney Frank and George H.W. Bush. These allegations are generally viewed as a product of the satanic panic, but there is some compelling evidence that they have at least some merit. There is a great book and a documentary from the early 90s available if one would like to learn more. Didn't one of the kids say he was taken to a camp out in the middle of nowhere and there was a giant statue of an owl? The person he told the story to felt it was too outlandish to report. Turns out that Bohemian Grove has a giant owl statue in it. That I'm retarded and people are just nice to me and talk to me so that I won't feel bad. Gnosticism. That a evil energy called the Demiurge created the universe and created humans to act as batteries, and that fear is energy they need. And when we die they fool us to go into the light by revealing loved ones to us that call our names, and that if we go into the light it's a con to get us to reincarnate to supply their energy over and over. The Gov Bush did do 9/11. The impact that this would have if proven true are shattering in proportions to what they then led to. Also the disappearance of the Malaysia flight. It was found, except the story wasn't disclosed and the reasons behind it are far more serious scary than what can be told. Mr. Skeletal won't actually grant you good bones and calcium. Edit. Update to thank and get good bones and calcium. Reality is an illusion. You're the only thing that actually exists. When you die, you realize that and in your loneliness go insane and create another fictitious world to occupy your mind until you die. Repeat forever. Remember flight MH17 that was shot down by Russia over Ukraine? 100 of the world's top scientists for AIDS research was on that plane, and the former president of the International AIDS Society was there as well. The cure for AIDS was close to being accomplished, and a new world order or top governments around the world allowed it to be shot down. Edit. Rudchin pointed out it was actually 6 not 100. Early media reports were inaccurate. Similarly, MH370 that sunk in the ocean just happened to have a bunch of patent holders for semiconductor technology, which upon their death, the patent ownership reverted to a company whose majority stockholder is a Rothschild-controlled company. Some people get all the luck. Wait, what? How did I never hear about this back when the incident took place? The conspiracy theory that MKUltra is still happening. MKUltra is pretty much what caused a lot of people to come up with conspiracy theories, because the government really was spiking people's drinks with LSD and running a bunch of horrible tests involving sensory deprivation. Read up on it if you want. But it's the stuff of nightmares. World's population is growing rapidly and the agriculture is getting increasingly vulnerable to droughts. This means that in a relatively short amount of time the world will face a very severe food crisis, sparking wars and unrest. It is not too far-fetched to think that at this very moment somewhere in the underground lab scientists are designing a virus that will wipe out the precise number of people to avoid the chaos. Agriculturally we can support about 12 billion humans in its current state, but the way we have been destroying the aquifers and soil with the chemicals we use to constantly be farming the same crops like corn, wheat and soy are destroying millions upon millions of valuable acreage that supports this number. We do have enough food for a while, but the allocation is the problem. The food isn't distributed to countries that need it the most due to capital, and the fields have about 20 more years of this science experiment left before it's so dead that it just won't be able to support anything. So in my opinion it's not a conspiracy at all. The virus stuff though, that's quackery. Sustainability and Bugs are two documentaries on Netflix you can watch that actually talk about this a lot. So far, an improved standard of living seems to be the most effective population control. The better off people are, the less kids they have, to the point where many Western countries are below replacement rate. Sub-replacement fertility, Wikipedia webpage. The Large Hadron Collider damage and shutdown incident was actually due to the production of a micro-black hole, which has sunk to the Earth's core and is eating the Earth from the inside out. Now, even if it was possible, there's simply not enough energy to make one that could do that. It would evaporate almost instantly. We're good, fam. Rest easy. The 1% and politicians are hoarding so much wealth because they and the government know climate change isn't reversible and are planning on using the money to fortify themselves in safe havens. The Krabby Patty secret formula is not actually a physical formula. Instead, it is simply the existence of SpongeBob. He is the formula. He is the only secreter in existence that has the ability to craft the perfect Krabby Patty. That is why in the first episode where he makes the burger, he is able to whip up thousands of them before the secret formula is even revealed to him. This is objectively disproven by the episode where their former fry cook shows up and crafts a Krabby Patty so delicious, so brilliant, that everyone faints. You are a fool. Hand back your SpongeBob diploma. That believing in these narratives is the conspiracy. That is the mind control of creating passive victims or people actively choosing against their best interests in order to maintain the illusion of security. It doesn't matter so much what you believe, but that you believe at all. Once that hook is set, I can sell you. Consider that the missing link in human evolution may actually be the species that created humans. I will call this species People Zero. In mythology, pop culture, and literary fiction there have often been splices of humans and other animals. Centaurs, mermaids, minotaurs, and even to some extent, angels. What if the humans that exist today are the final form of a species that was created for a higher life form to use a slave labor food source on Earth? The People Zero/fish, People Zero/horse, and People Zero/bird hybrids were all attempts to create a species that could be used for labor in the different environments of Earth. However, the only one that succeeded was a People Zero/primate hybrid. This hybrid was further tested, resulting in Neanderthals, Homo sapiens, and other ancestral and exotic forms of humans. Through evolution and extinction, the only People Zero hybrid experiment that was successful is us. But isn't the missing link basically an invention of creationists? I mean, from an evolution perspective, the evolution from primate to human is a process that is almost continuous. In order to have no missing link, you would need a fossil from every generation from primate to human, which is impossible. That's sometime around 2015 the player of the simulation in which we are currently living got bored with his save and began to hit the equivalent of the disaster button in SimCity over and over again. That Theresa May's arms are alien weapons, and when music plays she loses control of these weapons. She tries desperately to keep them under wraps, but soon enough a song oozing with so much funk, so much goddamn jive will come on and we'll be doomed. Those lanky limbs will turn all life to dust. That male models have been assassinating world leaders for over 200 years. Pharmaceutical companies are withholding a cure for cancer because of how much money they make from the current treatments such as chemo. Now I know that there are tons of cancers, so there being a single magical cure is something that just will never happen. But imagine how scary it would be if it were true. These companies are so greedy that they are not only willing to kill millions of people, but also put their family and friends through the terrible ordeal of watching them die slowly from cancer. It's pretty fucked up. This one bugs the shit out of me. If a company invented a cure for cancer, they'd immediately become one of the most valuable companies on the planet. Saying they are sitting on a cure is saying they are not that profit focused, which seems silly. When you stop seeing constant updates about climate change in the news, you know some imminent ecological catastrophe is coming. And the rich just want the public to quietly and calmly go about their ordinary lives without panicking while they all pile into the bunkers they've built for themselves because they knew it was coming all along. This only really applies to America, but it makes sense to me. We are the world military superpower. Most of our nation's industry trade negotiations that keep us on top relies on this. So think about that first. And now think about the things that are wrong with America. Our healthcare sucks. Education is insanely expensive, and the idea of college being necessary to make a good living has been driven into us. As well as minimum wage being fucking laughable to the point where an average family cannot survive on it. We are constantly at war and trying to play world police. We have never not had enemies or been involved in a conflict off of our soil, especially if it benefits our elite financially. Now, in order to keep this well-oiled machine running, you need people to join the military. A lot of people. The main reasons people join the military in America are for healthcare, education payments, and because they feel lost and have no other direction as a result of our piss-poor high school agendas. People aren't taught how to survive or learn practical skills at all. It makes joining the military after high school look very enticing. If we got universal healthcare and free education, enrollment would significantly drop off, resulting in a pretty quick collapse in our dynasty. It's all a well-oiled machine designed to keep the empire rolling over the backs of our young men and women while keeping the elite rich from whatever military corporate endeavor they can think of. Well, it's a well-known fact, Sonny Jim, that there's a secret society of the 5 wealthiest people in the world, known only as the Pentaverate, who run everything in the world including the newspapers and meat tree, annually in a secret country mansion in Colorado known as the Meadows. So who's in this Pentaverate? The Queen, the Vatican, the Gettys, the Rothschilds, and Colonel Sanders before he went tits up, who I hated the Colonel, with his wee beady eyes and that smug look on his face. OHH, you're gonna buy my chicken. The pineal gland does more than we think. It's been documented in various cultures, but we have no idea what it does. The governments are secretly poisoning our brains with the fluoride to crystallize or deactivate our pineal gland to limit our capabilities and make us dumber. It's hard to say why the consequences are, as we don't know what it did in the first place. That the US government or one or more factions within the government orchestrated 9/11, or even simply allowed it to happen. It's not a theory I buy into wholesale, but if true, the implications would be staggering and the ramifications would be insane. As a government employee, I can assure you we are not competent enough to pull it off or secure enough to pull it off and not have some jackass write a tell-all book about how we did it. That my former employee Peter Parker is Spider-Man. I know this can't possibly be true because Peter was a journalist and upheld the fine reputation of all journalists worldwide in telling the truth. He's not a menace like Spider-Man. That the government curates conspiracy theories to suit its interests. For example, 19 dudes with box cutters pull off a massive broadside attack on US soil. This threatens the very valuable narrative of the invincible USA. Conspiracy theories naturally emerge. The CIA etc. work their influence into these, and help popularize the notion that the attack was an inside job. This lets people imagine a US government which is not impotent, but in fact omnipotent, if evil. A model for this is proposed in the film Mirage Men, which accuses the FOC of planting alien UFO conspiracy theories to discredit people who had observed top-secret aircraft. Not sure if this counts as a conspiracy, but any religion that results in me going to hell for infinity. I'm more or less atheist, but I've been doing a bit of research on the Christian-Jewish beliefs on hell lately, specifically as stated in the Old and New Testaments. Truth of the matter is that the Bible doesn't actually say a whole lot about it. In fact, there's a lot of evidence to show that, as far as the Bible is concerned, there really isn't one for human souls. The difference being that heaven means eternal life and hell means death, not eternal suffering. Basically, hell is what atheists believe actually happens when you die. So, the chosen go to heaven and rest are just dead. Most of what's believed as far as the devil torturing souls in fire is just word of mouth over generations. I've always heard that heaven and hell and even purgatory are all the exact same metaphysical space. Hell is simply a separation from God, the equivalent of being sent to a place with music, but you can't hear it, art, but you can't see it. The place you're in, hell, is good, but you are separated from God and cannot appreciate it. I've kind of always liked that concept, since it solves at least a few of the problems with Christianity and is also a lesson that we can take something away from. Life is good. Happiness is all around you. All you need to do is change your attitude about it, which is more or less true. Some things are absolutely horrible, obviously, but a lot of people who are miserable, not clinically depressed, just unhappy, simply haven't learned how to appreciate where they are and live in the moment. Also an atheist, if that wasn't clear. The golden age of Saturn and the purple haze. Saturn, at some point in the distant past, was a brown dwarf star. Earth, along with Mars and Uranus, revolved around Saturn within its plasma sheath. Saturn's plasma sheath made it so that Earth's atmosphere was perpetually engulfed by a purple haze. The plasma sheath also acted as a barrier so that nothing could be seen from either the inside out, nor from the outside in. Now enter the Sun and Jupiter. The introduction of these two giant celestial bodies into the existing Saturnian system caused the planets influenced by Saturn to be stripped from its gravitational field. As a result, we were pushed to our current location in the solar system, and somehow our saltwater oceans also came from Saturn, but forgot how. That there is no one but you. You are God and that is it. You just spend eternity living through these mundane lives to experience your creations from the inside out. After death you come back to an overview, alone in the void. If anti-gun politicians arrange mass shootings. Example, the Las Vegas shooting last year was perpetrated by some random old dude with no real history of anything or stated agenda who killed himself afterwards. ATF was not allowed to actually inspect the guns used. just so happened to occur right before significant pro-gun legislation was going to pass a major hurdle in the form of the HPA Share Act. Obviously that wasn't pushed forward. Several states passed new legislation. There are still ongoing federal attempts to reinterpret the law to make bump stocks other illegal. Not saying I think it's true, but it is spoopy. Over the years people have spoken about Titanic and learned how it sunk on that dreadful night in April 1912. However, some people are led to believe that it was in fact its sister ship, the Olympic, that sunk as part of an insurance scam. The reason behind people thinking that the ship is not real, a Titanic, takes us back to the 20th of September 1911 when the Olympic collided with the HMS Hawke just off the coast of the Isle of Wight and X-200B. This incident caused many problems for the ship's owners, White Star Line, as this meant that it would have to be taken out of service while they repaired it, but this also meant that the maiden voyage of Titanic had to be put back from the 20th of March to the 10th of April. This at the time was something that White Star Line could not afford to do, as they had legal bills to pay and the cost of repairing the Olympic as well. This meant that they had to come up with a way to claim back not only the money that they would have missed out on due to Olympic not being in service, loss of revenue, but also the money they couldn't claim back from the incident. So they came up with a plan. The plan was simple: switch Olympic with her sister ship Titanic and sink it to claim compensation. No one would know they had swapped the ships, except the people in charge. J. Bruce's May, Lord Peary, Thomas Andrews and J.P. Morgan. As if you looked at the ships when they were sitting beside each other, you would not know which one was which unless you looked at the nameplates on both ships. And X-200B. As soon as the plan was set in motion, they went about changing the Olympic to look exactly like its sister ship by covering the floors with carpet, as the Olympic has tile flooring, and the passengers and crew who had been on Olympic then. Titanic would have been able to see the footprints left by previous passengers. If they didn't do this, people would have wondered why this brand new ship that no one had been on was covered in footprints and stains from spilled drinks. Other parts of the ship would have been changed as well, for example taking out cabins on B deck from the actual Titanic and replace them with the Olympic's promenade to make the switch that all the more believable. There is one thing that allows people to tell the difference between the two ships are the portholes on the sea deck and X-200B. When the Titanic was pictured while being built, it had 14 evenly spaced portholes, but when it left Southampton on doomed maiden voyage on the 10th of April 1912, it had 16 unevenly spaced portholes. This is not the only piece of evidence that can be gathered to help back up this theory. There are also people who had built the Titanic back in the shipyard Harland and Wolff in Belfast that over the years had come out and said that the two ships were in fact swapped, and if they told anyone, White Star Line told them it would basically be the last job that they ever did. So obviously they would have kept quiet, but they didn't, because the families of the people who built the ship know about the scam. And X-200B. Paddy Fenton is someone who had told his fellow seamen that they were in fact switched. A man in Australia sent a letter to the Northern Star newspaper on the 31st of July 1996, which talks about a conversation his son had with Paddy. Here's an extract of that letter. When the surviving crew got to port, they were all taken aside and met by two men. One in a high position in the company, the other man was in a very high position in the government. The government man read the crew the Official Secrets Act, explaining that if they told of the real reason for the sinking, or the rumors of an insurance scam, they would serve a minimum of 20 years in jail and would never get a job when they got out. J.P. Morgan was amongst many people who cancelled his trip at the last minute as he was of ill health, when in actual fact he had been spotted in France 2 days later and appeared to be in perfectly well health. J. Bruce's May's wife Julia and their children also cancelled due to his wife's ill health before, however, they were spotted on a motoring holiday in Wales. And X200B. JP Morgan also had 7 valuable bronze statues removed 1 hour before the ship left Southampton. This situation led many people to believe that they both knew what was about to happen with the ship on its maiden voyage, especially after JP Morgan had publicly spoke out to the country and certified that he would definitely be aboard the ship. Was the real reason behind this lie from JP Morgan due to the fact he knew the ship was going to sink? And X200B. JP Morgan also had 7 valuable bronze statues removed 1 hour before the ship left Southampton. This situation led many people to believe that they both knew what was about to happen with the ship on its maiden voyage, especially after JP Morgan had publicly spoke out to the country and certified that he would definitely be aboard the ship. Was the real reason behind this lie from JP Morgan due to the fact he knew the ship was going to sink? And X200B. JP Morgan also had 7 valuable bronze statues removed 1 hour before the ship left Southampton. This situation led many people to believe that they both knew what was about to happen with the ship on its maiden voyage, especially after JP Morgan had publicly spoke out to the country and certified that he would definitely be aboard the ship. Was the real reason behind this lie from JP Morgan due to the fact he knew the ship was going to sink? And X200B. JP Morgan also had 7 valuable bronze statues removed 1 hour before the ship left Southampton. This situation led many people to believe that they both knew what was about to happen with the ship on its maiden voyage, especially after JP Morgan had publicly spoke out to the country and certified that he would definitely be aboard the ship. Was the real reason behind this lie from JP Morgan due to the fact he knew the ship was going to sink? And X200B. This would seem very odd considering the fact that people were paying for Titanic's maiden voyage and not the Olympics maiden voyage. Was this done deliberately to help with the switch? And X200B. TLDR. Theorists believe that the Olympic, the Titanic's sister ship, was the one that actually sank in 1912. Many believe that an insurance scam is to blame. Did JP Morgan have several bronze statues removed shortly before it set sail? Bush did 9/11. The US just started a war for oil. They could do it again. We'd all die of it. Backfired once.